Time for another potato reveal. These are Cara, new seed potatoes sent to me by Brendan, and they really haven't died back. I need potatoes, so I'm going to harvest them anyway and see what's down there. They've grown beautifully all summer. Wonderful tops anyway. Let's hope there's lots of potatoes down there as well. Thought it would be another one that's full of ants, large black ants this time. The last time it was little things. Ants moved right in. I don't know if they've damaged anything this time or not, but they didn't the other time that I found a pot full of ants. They were living there, but not damaging the potatoes. So far, it doesn't look like they've done any damage this time either. Nice size to these, Brendan. And again, this was, if I didn't already say, this was 2 seed potatoes and new ones. I have one more reveal to do later on at some point, and it has 2 of my Cara that I saved from last year, and 1 of the Charlotte potatoes that Brendan sent me this spring. It'd be very easy to tell them apart, which is which in there. The Caras always have this nice pink skin around the eyes, and the Charlottes are smaller and don't have that, so it won't be difficult to tell one from the other. Quite pleased with this so far, Brendan. Good size, quite a few of them. And no mold damage in these containers. I dug a few Linzer delicatessen out of the bed where I'm growing the potatoes under shavings, and they weren't a complete write-off, but lovely big potatoes with one end eaten out of it by miserable moles. I'm not sure. Bit of scab maybe on that one. That's the end of it or not? No, there's one more. Odd that I didn't come across the seed potatoes. Really solid with the roots. I think that's it. Maybe 1 or 2 small ones that I've missed, but I'm well pleased with that. 2 seed potatoes. It's a good amount of Caras, and I really like them. I find for me the best way to cook them is I steam them. I have a rice steamer with the ants, and I steam them in that. That way they don't all fall apart in the water. They're I think Brendan calls them a floury potato anyway, to just put them on and boil them. They sort of come apart a bit. I won't hazard a guess, as I said, because I'm no good at guessing, but I will weigh these and put the weight up on the screen here. Feel like quite a few. I import my lovely bake shop bags from Prague, Czech Republic. Just joking. A few years ago, friends and I
had a wonderful apartment for a week or so in Prague, and 4 or 5 story ancient building, architecture, whatever, and the ground floor was this wonderful bake shop. I saved all the bags and brought them home with me. Well, that'll get those weighed and the weight put up on the screen here. Sounds like that rooster just got choked. Hopefully you can read that. I will put it across the screen anyway, just in case you can't. One of my subscribers, I believe, who lives in Newfoundland, told me about autumn olives, which I had never heard tell of before. It's a misnomer. It's not actually an olive tree. You could never grow an olive tree in eastern Canada. I guess they're trying a few out in British Columbia someplace. But it is a fruit-bearing tree and can be grown from seed. So I ordered these seeds, I believe, on Amazon. I ordered them somewhere anyway. And they had to go through a stratifying process. First, you soak them, cover them with hot water and allowed it to cool, and soak them for 6 hours, and then you put them in a moist medium, and I've used the same stuff that I'm using now to plant them out in. This is some soil that just came out of the Cara potatoes, complete with ants, but the ants seem to be departing. And for 90 days it stayed in the refrigerator. So I am ready now to plant it out and see what happens. If I actually get any germination, grow them on this fall as much as possible, and then I will probably pot them up and put them in the cold frame in the hoop house for the winter. It says moist but not wet. Well, this is already moist, and it says 1/4 of an inch deep. Well, I'm not going to pick the seeds out of this. I'm just going to scatter it across the surface here. Pat it down, and water it just once. It wants to be warm, and I'm thinking that the hoop house is still too hot. Even this late in the summer, it gets quite hot in there. This is, what, the 23rd, I guess, of August when I'm doing this. And we're just about to come into fall here. The calendar says fall starts the 21st or 22nd or something like that of September, but not around here. The last week of August you'll be able to feel the difference in the temperature, and by September definitely we're into early fall. So I will watch these. It doesn't want to be too wet, it says, so I will pop them in the hoop house if we have a rainstorm threatening, and to leave them out here and see if we get any germination. If we do, I'll show you what happens. This is my enormous, at least I call it enormous, squash patch. I think maybe this is what happens when you use too much chicken poo when you're setting up your garden in the spring. There are 4 varieties here: the Georgia Candy Roaster Squash, Waltham Butternut, the Cacoots or Serpent de Sicilia, and the Hokkaido Pumpkin or Red Curry Squash. All have done well except for the Cacoots. I haven't found, well, anything that's really started to develop. Those things are supposed to be monstrous, and I do see a few small ones now. For the longest time, they produced thousands of male blossoms, or 4 plants, or probably literally hundreds of male blossoms, and no female blossoms. But lately I've seen a few female blossoms, and they're halfway up a hazelnut tree, and in the middle of the patch where I can't get at them to hand pollinate, so the bees are doing their best, I guess. Last night I noticed something on my red curry squash, so I quickly harvested all of the ones that I could see. There may be something hiding in the middle of the patch that I can't see. Give you a look at those. Well, that's all of the Hokkaido or red curry squash that I could find. 3, maybe 4 that are decent size and 4 that are smaller. But one of the ones that I've picked there is an example of the problem that I saw. I don't know if you can see these areas Here's one here. It still has like a jelly substance coming out of those areas. I know I'm not going to be able to save this one. I just saved it to show, to see if anybody could tell me what's happening here. I'm assuming some sort of a creature has got inside there. What? I don't know. Squash vine borer. I think that's in the vines, isn't it? I've never had squash vine borer, but whatever it is, I lost one already. It was starting to go soft. That was the one that I noticed yesterday and threw it away, and I'm just going to get this away from the ones that are continuing to cure and dry there. You leave them in the sun until this stem part that you've left on there goes dry and turns color and goes really hard and dry. Then you know the squash is cured and you can store it for a number of weeks or months before it's eaten. So if anybody can explain what that is, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Very meager onion harvest this year. I suppose to do with the hot, dry weather, but also I don't like the location where I planted most of them. Onions are supposed to fall over when they're done, and mine had a complete southern exposure on one side of them with the sunlight, and they fell over immediately anyway. Some of the nicer ones, which still aren't huge, but ones that size, and I have used a few in the house, those were grown in the bed where I'm growing, we've had those in the camera shot there or not. Those are growing in the bed where I had I still have the potatoes under shavings. Not really a back to Eden style garden, but something similar, heavily mulched anyway. And they did very well there, so I've been wondering what I would plant in that bed next year, and I think it'll be my onions. Maybe I'll put the garlic in there this fall as well, see how it does. I'm sure I will have volunteer potatoes, because reaching down under the shavings to get your potatoes, they come out nice and clean, but it's impossible to get them all, so I will be pulling a lot of volunteer potatoes out of there next year. The Waltham butternut finally started producing blossoms, and I haven't counted, but I've got several that are growing quite nicely, 8, 10, something like that. There's one sitting down in there, you can see that. I'm hoping that we have enough of the good fall weather remaining that they will harden off for me. I discovered one further over in the patch, which I can't find today for some reason. It's in behind leaves, I guess, that must have been pollinated quite early on. It's 2 or 3 times the size of that one, so that was encouraging. Maybe I will find 1 or 2 more hidden in there somewhere, but the ones I've hand pollinated everything that I can. I don't like to trust the bees to it, so hopefully they will at least grow and harden off so that I'll have some squash to store. They store for a nice long period of time. They're probably the best of the storage squash or the butternut. They'll keep for months. I hope you can see that. I can't really tell, there's so much sun on it. That is one of the Georgia candy roaster squash. Oh, it's got to be 2 feet long. Here comes Angel to inspect. I've just found some of that jelly stuff on it. I don't know what's going on here. I hope it doesn't mean I'm going to lose these. There are a number of them all over the garden. That's probably the largest, because I think it's the first one that got pollinated, and it's turning the tan color that they should be when they're complete. Never tasted them before. I certainly hope I like them, because I really don't know how many I've got, but they're hanging everywhere here. Hanging up in trees, up on tall plants, and going quite nicely. So should be able to pick those soon and set them over to dry and see what they're like. Just got a warning that this wants me to change the battery, so I don't know how long this will last, but I wanted to show you one of the Oka melons. They're coming along. I don't know how I'm going to tell if they're ripe or not. With most cantaloupe and watermelon type melons, there's a tendril closest to the melon, and when that turns brown, they're ready. But no tendrils on these things. Lots of tendrils holding the plant up, but none close to the melon. So I'll have to make a guess. I know they're very green at this point and not ripe, but quite a number hanging on these plants. Probably that's the largest. There are a number of smaller ones, but they're still coming on, and it's nice and warm in the hoop house, so they should continue to develop. I decided I would cut this one open. See if I can see what's happening inside. Try to cut down through one of the areas. Dirt on this little knife doesn't help matters any. It's a knife that I keep out here for extra large zucchini. I split them in half lengthwise and feed them to the hens. Okay. There's where there's one on the surface. Whatever it is, it seems to be just on the surface. It's not where anything has gone down in. Like, you know, a worm or something that would bored its way down in. Doesn't seem to be doing that. See that or not? I wasn't looking at the lens here. I don't know if I showed you the last one properly, but you can see that it's just sort of down a little depression. It's something that's only on the surface. So I'll keep an eye on that Georgia candy roaster squash. Hate to harvest it before it's ready to use, but if much more of it develops on there, I will harvest it and use it. Well, I guess that makes me feel better or worse. Whatever it isn't really inside the squash. It's something that attacks on the surface, I guess. So maybe that rules out vine borer, but if anybody has had experience with this, I would really appreciate you telling me what it is. And I guess that will wrap up this video. It's getting way above 15 minutes again already, so I will upload this and get it up on YouTube. Thank you for watching.